Hi everybody, welcome back once again to the Eastfield Gunroom YouTube channel. Now today's review, something a little bit different. I know I say that every week. We have got a requested review, but also something I've been wanting to do kind of from day one. What I've done though is I've kind of tried to source a couple of them so I can talk about the comparisons and the different kind of models. So today, which follows on nicely from the SKB 200E video we did, so do check that out. We have got another classic Japanese side-by-side, the legendary Winchester 23. Little tiny bit of history to start with. The Winchester 23 was not the first side-by-side produced by Winchester. That was the Winchester 21 back in, I believe, the 1930s. So this is kind of the reincarnation of that original Model 21. Now, the 23 was launched back in the very late 1970s, sort of 1978, 1979. And what it did, I think primarily, obviously, because of the involvement with America, is the fact that I think it was designed to be a big hunting gun. So we've got two examples here. We've got like a Waterfowl version and a more kind of mainstream field gun. Now in the States, it was available in 12 and 20 gauge, 26, 28 inch, and a whole plethora of different models throughout its production life, which I believe ran till around about 1986, 1987. What we tended to get here in the UK is we tended to get the two models, which were the super grade and the pigeon grade. To put it into basics, you've got the super grade, which you've got a little bit of scroll engraved on, which we've got one here we'll look at in a moment. And the pigeon grade, which you've got this dreadfully drawn pigeon that looked like something out of the Beano. So they're the kind of the two main models we got in the 23 line. The 20 gauge is not very common at all over here. 12 gauges, quite a lot. I can certainly remember seeing dozens of these in my time, and they've just become a little bit scarce. And I'm getting a lot of people saying, you know, can you drop on one? Because they just seem to be sitting in the back of people's cabinets that have, you know, shot for a number of years and probably done a bit less shooting potentially since the pandemic, which is a common thing, and they're just not seeing the light of day. So the 23, huge favorite of mine. I love Japanese guns of this era. There's not a huge choice of side-by-sides. Really, it's the SKB and the Winchester, in all fairness. And the guns we've got here, we've got two. We've got Super Grade, which is the one I just spoke about. And we've also got a gun that was built specifically for the European market, which is the Model 23 Waterfowl, or as it was known in the States, the Heavy Duck. So we'll just pick up the Super Grade. And I'll revert back to the SKB video, because the SKB, although it got some of the features of this, it was still that kind of, you know, small, lightweight, petite kind of side-by-side that kind of would emulate an English gun. You know, it had got the splinter forend rather than the beaver tail. It had got a little pistol grip, but not as big as this. And the idea behind the 23, it was a bigger, chunkier gun designed to go out and shoot big, heavy game, of course, in the States. Or it gained a particular following over here with people who had gotten over and under, maybe something Japanese like a Browning or a Winchester 101, for example, and they wanted a side-by-side because they wanted to go game shooting, they wanted something a little bit lighter, but the attributes of the over and under they wanted in the same kind of gun that they used for their game shooting, and this ticks a lot of boxes. So, this XTR 23, we've got a kind of satin nickel finish, if you like, with the scroll engraving. It's not over the top, it's tasteful. Underneath, we've got Winchester Super Grade. We've got an engraved forend iron. We've got a full-length tang on the trigger guard. And, you know, these guns were quite expensive. There wasn't a lot of competition at the time. You know, if you wanted a single trigger side-by-side in the late 1970s, early 1980s, I think Browning had a go at one called the BSS and the BSL, but it was a lot more money. There was the Miracus that Parker Hale were bringing into the UK, which was the model MS-150. They were less money than this, but they hadn't got the features. It was still double trigger, it was still straight on shots. This is quite a unique gun, particularly in the UK at that time. So this one is 28 inch. Now, the majority of these guns are fixed choke. If you come across a 23, it will be choked either quarter and half or half and full 9 times out of 10. They did do a multi-choke one, but it tended to be the 24 model, and they tended to have shorter barrels. I've only ever seen them in 26 inch. So if you do happen to come across a 23 with factory wind chokes in it, they are very, very rare. Not in the States, but certainly over here in the UK. So fixed choke, quarter and half, 3-inch chambers. They were all 3-inch because, of course, the idea behind these guns, they were big enough and robust enough to go out and put big, heavy cartridges through for all kinds of game shooting applications, wildfowl, etc., particularly, as I keep referring to, back over in the US. Now, what you've got with this one is you've got a raised rib, which is ventilated. I think it's about 6 or 7 mil parallel. It's slightly raised at the back like a ramp on it, and then you've got super grade nicely engraved into the rib, center bead, and a white foresight bead. So this is all kind of original. But what's very interesting is the majority of side-by-sides tend to come with concave ribs. This has got a raised rib, which is ventilated. Again, a little bit like something like a traditional live pigeon shooting gun. And I think that was to do with offering a kind of different sighting plane to what the conventional side-by-side shotgun offered. So ventilated, nicely ramped, 3-inch chambers. Obviously, as you'd expect, it's an ejector. Nothing complicated in the design of it, to be fair. It's almost like the over and under turned on its side, if you like, in terms of the mechanics of it. So this one here is Magnum proofed. In particular, if we look here, we've got the stamping of half and full choke. This particular gun has been bored out to half. This has come from a social fun clay shooter, if you like, that's got half and half choke, which makes it a very, very usable bit of kit. Again, you could argue that full, particularly with the eventuality of the lead shot ban, is just too much choke for most things in any shotgun. And then we go on to the action. Engine turned, a nice touch, you know, the attention to detail. We know the Japanese are big into this kind of finishing with the longer trigger tangs and the engine turning and the high gloss bluing, and this gun is no exception. We've got an engraved top lever, selective trigger, of course. Remember with the SKB, it was actually on the trigger, but we've got a conventional one here on the back strap, auto safe as standard. And then we move on to the wood, which is kind of where things change quite a lot, because yes, we've seen guns before with a semi-pistol or a Prince of Wales grip, but with this particular gun, you've got a big chunky beaver tail forend. That just, again, follows on from the idea that this is kind of a gun for the over and under shooter that wants a side-by-side that can do all the things his over and under can do. And it feels really good to me. I really like that style of forend. This particular gun has got probably better quality wood than I've seen on most 23s. It's got the original butt plate, of course, which is what we like. 14¼ inch length of pull, which again is kind of standard for the area. It would be a little bit on the shorter side. Even the game guns were a little bit longer, but not a lot, maybe 14 3/8 in the over and under ranges I'm talking about. So you've got this full length forend catch here. And this gun, as you would expect, you know, it's not the lightweight, skinny little English game gun. This gun weighs exactly 7 pounds. Now, they did do a lightweight, which was 6.5, but the majority of the ones certainly I've ever come across, be it pigeon grade or super grade, were pretty much bang on 7 pounds. In terms of the checker, we've got nice double point, nice chunky-ish grip, and it just feels good. The comb height is reasonable as well. You know, it's not super low, and that's why there was a big following with these here in the UK with clay shooters. Now, believe it or not, there actually was a few of these imported in 30-inch. The majority of the ones I've seen, probably 3 or 4, were all super grades, and they all came via Germany, mainly from people that were serving out there in the forces in the 80s. If you ever see a 30-inch one, you have to get your hands on it because they are so scarce. I believe probably less than 30 or 40 ever made it here into the UK. Bit of trivia for you. In terms of balance, I think personally you maybe want a gun like this to be a little bit barrel heavy to stop it moving about if you were putting big, massive, heavy game cartridges in. However, this gun is completely unaltered from new, apart from the chokes, which we've mentioned. And it is, well, if you wanted to be super fussy, a little bit in front of the hinge pin, but what you've got to take into account, you have got quite a short stock, and this butt plate, which probably weighs about as much as a Chewit. Right, moving on. So in comparison, we have got a gun that was only produced for the European market. Now there was another one, they did a 23 Europe, it was actually called a European, and that did have a straight hand stock, and it did have a splinter forend. So that sort of then meant that the range was there for anybody, whether they wanted the traditional English feel or they wanted this bigger, chunkier presence that the standard 23 range kind of offered. So this one is called 23 Waterfowl, only available for the European market. The version of it in the States was called the Heavy Duck, and basically it is a heavier version of what we've just looked at. So it's got a plain black action. Again, if you're going down the foreshores and you're knocking about, you don't want to spend extra money on engraving because it's a tool to do a job. You want it to look plain, no problem at all. The barrels themselves, slightly heavier. And if you look at that rib, it is enormous in comparison to the super grade. So again, that will give you that extra kind of weight. It's still about 7mm parallel, but it's a solid rib rather than the ventilators. That will give you probably an extra couple of ounces in terms of the weight, which again ties in with the application of what this gun was designed for. 3-inch chambers. We've got Winchester 23 Waterfowl, nicely done on the bottom with a gold trigger. Again, whereas we'd got a lot of coin finishing on the standard 23 super grade, on this it's all black because it's no frills, and like I said, it's not designed to look pretty, it's designed to go out and bring ducks out of the sky. Now these were available in 28-inch and 26-inch. They were all factory multi-choked. I've never seen a fixed choke one. Interestingly enough, for this particular gun, it has been shortened to 26.5-inch and it's been Teague multi-choked. So it's not the exact original specimen that we would like, but it does have a lot of the original features. Apart from the foresight bead and the mid bead, they've also been replaced at some point. So it's identical to the super grade, only you haven't got the level of finishing, you haven't got the engine turning, because again, you don't need it. It's a no frills, go out, blow ducks out the sky gun, and things like engine turning are completely unnecessary. Like I said, we've got 26.5-inch with the big rib. If we move on to the stock, some slight differences again. It's a little bit fatter, it's a little bit chunky. Again, we're looking for more weight, and we've got a bigger pistol grip. We've got a more full pistol grip rather than the standard Prince of Wales or rounded knob on the XTR model. So the woodwork on this gun is interesting because it's actually extremely well figured for the grade of the gun. A lot of these I've seen have been a lot plainer, and we've got a Winchester butt pad on the back. I don't think it's the original. I think it's come off a diamond grade or something like that, like a trap gun, because it doesn't quite fit. But interestingly, and again, I wouldn't say this is factory, someone has gone to the trouble of putting an oval in it as well. If we look at the bottom of the pistol grip, it's got a pistol grip cap on it. The idea behind that, of course, is if you wanted to put swivels on it to carry the gun around, it'd be easy to put a swivel in the bottom of there. In addition, of course, you would have to put one on the barrels. Again, this is not something that's uncommon in the States or countries where they do a lot of hunting high in the mountains. They will have a shotgun on a sling. It's just a completely different lifestyle to what we get here in the UK in terms of the type of game shooting that we do. Checkering is slightly different again, in line with the bigger pistol grip. And everything is blued. It's all about the gun being super durable when it's out in wetlands and horrible conditions. You know, the fore-end iron is blued. Even the pins on the side of the action, they're all blued. So the gun just, you know, in essence, won't go rusty at all. Interesting point with the fore-end. We have got this kind of horn insert in the front. Not quite sure whether that's original or not. It's been a few years since I've seen one of these guns. And also the checkering is different to the super grade. If you look at the bottom here, it's almost like a ripped circus tent. Now I've banged on about the weight. You know, it's got a bigger rib, it's got a bigger pistol grip, it's got more wood in it. Essentially, that makes it heavier. Now, typically this will be about 7.5 pounds, about half a pound heavier than the super grade and the pigeon grade models. However, because it's been shortened in the barrels, it will weigh a little bit less than that. So how does it balance? To be fair, slightly better than the super grade, but the thing to take into account there is, of course, that it has had the barrel shorter, so it is slightly different. So there we've got the two side by side. Now, these guns are a lot of fun. Here in the UK now, there's like I said, a big resurgence for, I suppose, side by sides in particular, but because the majority of people nowadays, they shoot a Mondeo, they shoot a Brest, they shoot a Browning, they shoot a Miracle. What they're looking for to have a bit of fun on a Sunday morning, because there's even, like I said, side by side dedicated clay competitions these days, is they want the single trigger, they want the bigger fore-end, they want the rib, because it's akin more to what they used to shoot in. So what I would say to you, anybody watching the channel, if you do fancy owning a side-by-side, yes, there's a lot of issues or foibles with, you know, traditional side-by-sides, particularly Spanish and English ones. They've got straight-hand stocks. A lot of them are double trigger. They're a bit skinny, a bit light for kind of the clay shooting intended purpose. If you can get your hands on a 23, they are a great, great piece of kit. And like I said, becoming a little bit scarce, particularly to find one like this super grade in very, very good original condition. One thing I'd just like to mention is that all Model 23s are mechanical triggers. So should you get the urge to buy one for kind of going on simulated game days and you want to use lightweight cartridges, no problem whatsoever, because there are no inertia operation issues that you might get with lighter cartridges in a gun. So eagle-eye viewers will notice to the left of me, we have some paper and a traditional Winchester khaki case. Just a little bit of history. I managed to find these this advert for the 23. Like I said, this is back from sort of 1978-80, and it's quite interesting because it talks about the lightweight models in particular. Like I said, not many of those here in the UK, because they did a 25.5-inch barrel with 1/4 3/4 chokes, which is quite interesting, and the gun only weighed 6.5 pounds. I would imagine if you source one of these guns in the States, where they had dozens and dozens of different models, they had presentation grades and everything, they were absolutely huge over there, in line with the original popularity of the 21 from sort of 1930 to 1960-ish. These guns still have a following over here, and quite rightly so, in my opinion, here in the UK. And this bit here, this is an article from a famous American shooting journalist named Larry Brown, and it just gives you a bit more information about different models and, you know, timelines and that kind of stuff. And it's interesting to read that, because if you look in here, there's just so many options that we never got. We literally got the crumbs. Now, I think at the time when these were being imported, they were being bought through Edgar Brothers, and it just shows that it was kind of a niche thing that, you know, they weren't prepared to put tons and tons of these guns into stock, because I suppose the danger is that if not everybody wants one and it doesn't catch on, you don't sell them all. Right, so interesting article there. And to finish, we have a case. So this is your standard Winchester khaki leather trim case with the interior from an E-type Jag in this red 1970s. Well, I would imagine sofas were made out of it, to be fair, in the 1970s. And in here, you've just got a little Teague choke box. Like I said, this particular 23 Waterfowl has been Teague multi-choked. Some very, very skinny little smart multi-chokes to go in there, which from a universal point of view makes it very user-friendly. You can use it for kind of, like I said, sim days. You could use it for clay shooting because it's got that extra weight. Or if you wanted to go game shooting with it, again, it would handle big cartridges, no problem. No issue in terms of proof or chamber length. So that has been a requested review, the Winchester Model 23. I hope you found it interesting. If you've got any questions about Winchester 23s or anything shotgun related, please contact me directly. Don't forget to check out the website. Don't forget to keep liking and subscribing the channel. And from me and these two classic Winchester side-by-sides, I'll see you again soon.